Welcome to Live and Love Life with Alena Chapman, a show that explores and shares with you how individuals who were once facing unsurmountable obstacles and setbacks have overcome them by using a certain set of tools, techniques, and attitude to help them transform their lives from ordinary into extraordinary. These same tools are shared with you here in this show so you too can lead a life that you love. And now, here's our host, Alena Chapman.
Hello, this is Alena Chapman, and today I have a guest who has made it her life mission to be an advocate for children who have been or are being abused. Adult survivors or children going through it right now. I can't think of a more noble cause to help children survive because they lose their rights so often, or what they say isn't taken seriously so often. And to make it your life mission to help these children is just phenomenal. With that, I would like to introduce to you Eileen King. Hello, Eileen.
Hello, Alena. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
I am so happy to have you. It's just a wonderful way you have chosen to live your life. And I want to bring more awareness to this, more awareness to people maybe who have been abused, people who are seeing abuse around them. But first of all, what was it that had you choose this purpose in your life?
I lived in Germany for about 8 years. And when I lived there, I was consumed with trying to understand how the Holocaust could have happened and how it was possible for so many people to be literally exterminated in front of the eyes of the German citizenry. And all my English-speaking friends, we would sit around and talk about this and ask ourselves, how could it have happened? And as I learned more about what had happened and got to know people who were alive during that time, I realized that many people were afraid to speak out. Many people had to turn their faces away. And out of fear, just for their own safety and for their family's safety.
Yeah.
And that there was this sort of complicit silence. People knew, but they couldn't say anything. They wouldn't say anything. And living there and learning about this, and also learning about some of the resistance movements like the White Rose, which was an extraordinary group of young people who leafleted against the Nazi regime, who were executed for what they did.
I didn't even know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a fascinating group. And they had this courage to speak out. And they were punished for that courage. And I thought a lot about them and did a project once with a young woman who we spoke things out of some of the letters. In any case, I asked myself if I ever ran across something that was so wrong, so manifestly wrong and on such a large scale that people were not speaking about.
Yes.
Would I have the courage to do anything? Would I have the courage to speak? And I came back to the United States with that question, and my sister, who is an attorney here in Washington, D.C., had started a group with Marilyn Vanderburg Adler, who was a former Miss America from 1958. And they were working on issues around child sexual abuse, advocating for adult survivors of child sexual abuse, that they'd be able to get the therapy they needed, that there would be changes in the statutes of limitations for lawsuits to redress the harm that was done to the people when they were children. And so my sister said, would you like to help out? I had no idea about any of this. And because I'd been working in the field of special education, I think you would call it, in Germany and in the U.S., in communities for people with disabilities. So I was going to take a break from that. And I said, I'll do this. This will be interesting. I'll learn something new. And I began reading everything I could get my hands on. And when I started reading, I thought, oh, this is it. This is it. This is that thing that nobody wants to talk about. And that
Right.
is terrifying, and that people are afraid to say, this is what's really happening.
Right.
And as I began to get more involved and made friends in Washington, D.C., so many people, after I told them what I was doing, said, it happened to me. I know somebody to whom it happened. It was my grandfather. It was my father. It was my brother. It was, the neighbor down the street. And I realized that we're walking around in a world where there are so many people who have been affected by this.
It's amazing.
And it's not just the stranger danger, which is popularly thought, to be the problem. It's in our families. It's in our acquaintances. There are people who are trusted and have great reputations who are also violating children. And I think this was what spurred me, this realization that here was something so large and of such epidemic proportions and is so suppressed. It's like a taboo subject. I couldn't turn away from it. Just couldn't turn away.
And it's interesting because you found your life purpose just by following your interests, following what concerned you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the talent, caring for people is a type of talent. It's something deep within us, and everything you've chosen has been to care about people, to help people, and to see it start to really grow into this area, which is an area that can be overwhelming because, like you said, it's almost everywhere, and it is taboo.
It's almost everywhere, and the solutions are extremely difficult because it's difficult to work on something where it's not being talked about. Now, our area is a little bit more specialized in the sense that we're looking at child abuse cases, in particular child sexual abuse cases that are happening in the family. So it's a case of incest or child physical abuse, emotional abuse, and where the abuser is using the legal strategy of going for custody in order to, punish the mom, to silence the child, to maintain control. These are the sort of legal strategies that we run into all the time. And what's so interesting is that nowadays there's much more out there about child abuse and child sexual abuse. There are many large awareness campaigns also about domestic violence, and the No More campaign is a good example, and others. The national coalitions are very outspoken. But what they don't talk about is how easy it is for an abuser to use the court system to get custody of their child victim.
That is a very interesting topic because I have seen with women who are getting divorced and their concern. And yet, even with a custodial psychologist coming in and talking about the two parents and even having that intervention, I have still seen the woman who is the stable parent, and it's the father who is doing the abuse, and still the father wins, either joint and sometimes even sole, and yet he is the abuser, and she's made out to be the unstable, paranoid, can't handle her finances or whatever it is. It just blows my mind. And so what kind of movements are happening now that this hopefully is getting fixed?
I think, the large national organizations, especially the ones who are working on questions around domestic violence, they know about this. But there's still something taboo about speaking about this openly, even though there are many murder-suicides that are in the context of custody and divorce and separation. However, there are cases where the mother is abusive or she has married someone who is unsafe.
Right.
So we've had cases where the mother is abusive, physically abusive, where she has not protected the children from her new partner who is a sex offender or who is molesting the children. So there are variations here, and it's important. While I do believe there's a strong gender component that's very biased against mothers in courts, to be absolutely accurate, it just has to be said that there are mothers who don't protect, and there are also mothers who are abusive.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I
And
just want to
do
be
know
clear that I'm not in a black and white situation where it's all, mom's all good, dad's all bad.
No,
It's not
never.
like that. Yeah.
I worked through the court system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, for 2.5 years, and I worked in the county I live in and then to two surrounding counties. And so I was dealing with people of all races, creeds, economic standing, the whole gamut, cultural differences, everything. But I have to say, there was no sure way. And it's sometimes very hard to tell. And the cases that I dealt with, it was a relationship, a family planning. It was, right relations was basically people who were fighting over custody, having very difficult divorces, abuse, a lot of abuse. I was always amazed. Some of the hardest cases I had to teach were women who had a husband who was abusing them and the kids, and they would not leave.
Mm-hmm.
I did not understand that. I mean, when the kids are trying to protect you, and yet you don't see it to protect them.
Yeah.
And so it was my job to help them to understand that their purpose is to protect their children.
Once abuse has happened, once there's been abuse and or domestic violence, child abuse and or domestic violence, the options going forward for the protecting parent, and I'm going to say mother because that's the primary type of case we have, the options are not great because if you're going to leave, you are forced to go to court. You may not have the finances for court. You may go in representing yourself. And, the person who represents themselves, the watchword is, you've got a fool for a client.
Exactly.
You have no idea about the laws and procedure and all of that stuff, your due process rights. And you can find yourself being pushed and prodded and manipulated, in particular if the other party has counsel, has a lawyer, and you're at a tremendous disadvantage. And so any person considering leaving a situation has the fear of going from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
And that is very true. So, and there is no guarantee at all that going into court will result in any kind of a just decision for resulting in the protection of the children and or the mother. And I know locally, people do court watch here for protective order cases, that the majority of protective order cases where abuse is found, that would be domestic violence primarily, the courts do not make any sort of safety precautions for the children. So contact between the abuser and the children, that goes on as if nothing has happened.
Yeah,
and there's this mistaken belief that, well, he only abused her, he's not abusing the children. But witnessing domestic violence, being in a household with domestic violence, being in a hostage situation, which often is what happens, is extremely harmful for children. Plus, we see different results for boys and girls. There's a tendency for girls to kind of internalize things, not always, but often, into depression, eating disorders, etc., and for the boys to externalize it in acting out, running away, aggressive acts on others, stealing, drug use, so on and so forth.
Sure.
And so it's not just a simple thing of like, well, he didn't touch the kids, so it must be okay. So I feel, in watching these cases, I feel like we have so far to go in the people responsible for making these decisions. And it's not just the judges. It includes the attorneys appointed for children. It includes the psychological or custody evaluators who are appointed. It includes parenting coordinators. It includes therapists. I mean, there's a whole list of people that I think are really not well informed. And it's not just a matter of ignorance. It actually this gets into a very controversial area. It actually pays well to not be informed, because if you are making decisions, let's say about the mental health of the parties, that benefits the person with the money, you have a great deal of control and influence, there's no reason to raise your standards of doing an evaluation that takes into consideration what we know about abuse, child development, how children disclose, etc., because you would be putting yourself in a situation where the judges no longer like what you're doing.
That's right.
And,
That's
you know,
right.
in Maryland, you go to a courthouse and you say, can you tell me who are the people who you like to refer to in custody evaluations or psychological evaluations? They'll
That's
give you
right.
a list.
Yes.
And you run into these folks again and again and again.
Interesting. Well, what you have chosen can be a very tough road. A lot of people I talk to who choose their life purpose, it's usually they are living on a day-to-day feeling so excited and just can't wait to get out there to live life, and every day is new and exciting. Now, with yours, it can be that way too, but you also have a lot of obstacles that you are fighting against. How do you feel, and how do you keep your motivation going, and how do you keep your passion going? What is it that feeds you to keep going in this purpose in your life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, it is really hard, and there are moments of real despair. There are also moments of anger at how wrong some decisions are. There's also moments of tremendous joy and satisfaction. And I tell you, you know, sitting in a courtroom watching really good attorneys practice the law honorably, truthfully, and in an upright manner, it sometimes brings tears to my eyes to see this. We work with wonderful, you know, pro bono attorneys throughout our region here. That's those people and their dedication and their commitment, they inspire me. And it's an honor to work with them. Personally, I have my own spiritual practice, prayer that accompanies me through the day. That creates a kind of like a foundation under my feet and gives me the feeling of being in the position of always listening for what is guiding me.
That's
and
nice.
I don't think I could do this work without that foundation under my feet. The other thing is I know there are many people who pray for us and pray for me, you know, as an individual, pray for the work, pray for the organization. And prayer is a very powerful force for the good.
Yes, it is.
And it's truly powerful. And even attorneys that I work with who are not themselves believers will ask a mother, do you have people who can pray for you? If there can be a prayer circle, get that going. Because we know that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Child Justice Incorporated, correct?
That's right, Child Justice Inc. And I was just going to say the actual mission of it, and just so that's standing out there. Our mission is to protect and advocate for children who have been abused or witnessed domestic violence, to support them and their protective parents, and to promote change through community outreach, education, and policy recommendations.
Is this a nationwide organization?
Well, we have contacts throughout the United States, and I network with people all over the country. And occasionally we're able to help out on cases that are in other states, you know, as far away as Washington State, California, Vermont, Florida, Hawaii, you know. So in that sense, we're national, but we're a tiny little office. And we have a national outreach, yes, but our capacity to take a whole of, you know, many cases is limited right now because it's primarily me, occasionally with legal interns, and I do a lot of networking, as I said already, to, you know, keep us connected and to have pro bono resources in other states. And so that's a growing effort to network with law firms outside of our immediate Washington, D.C. area.
So if, say, I was getting divorced and say there was abuse going on and I did not have a lot of money for really good counsel, or I didn't know how to fight it, I would come to your office.
Generally what people do is they contact me and we do a review of the case. We have preliminary questions that we send out to get a basic idea of what's going on, because the cases that we have we can accept under our mission are cases where there is documented evidence of abuse and or domestic violence. So that's our first question. Is there domestic violence, child abuse? How is it documented? And from there, we send a more formal intake form that people fill out. They send that back to us with documentation supporting any allegations of abuse. And then from there, we go into conversations over the phone. If somebody is local, they sometimes come to my office in D.C. And then we see in what way can we be helpful. And in some cases, I'm just doing court watch. I'm in there watching the proceedings. In other cases, the level of abuse is so strong and so well documented that we're able to persuade a law firm to take it on a pro bono basis. That's extremely difficult to do. Very challenging to get attorneys to do pro bono work on these types of cases. I have many contacts where I am a support over the phone. We talk about the case, what's going on, what are the next steps, is there information out there, are there experts out there, are there other cases that could be helpful, to your particular case. Do I know of any laws that might be helpful? I'm not an attorney, so I need to be very careful that I don't cross any line where it appears that I'm giving legal advice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I understand that. And every state is a little bit different too, isn't it?
Every state is different, yeah. But sometimes, I will know somebody in a state, and I can refer that person to them, and then they're in a much better position to say, here's what goes on in, Montana.
Well, you can help the person gain resources and answers, really.
And also, people will say to me, I've looked around, nobody will talk to me. I feel so alone. I feel like I'm the only person to whom this has ever happened. It's crazy making. I'm watching my children or my child change in front of my eyes. My family is sick of me talking about this. My friends are sick of me talking about this. I feel alone and isolated. And so part of the help is also just connecting people to other people who understand what's going on.
I think the thing that floors me the most is that if it's a family member, and it's not a direct family member, meaning you're not your immediate family, but say an aunt and uncle or something like that, or even a friend, and you see this happening, I don't know how you can shut your eyes to it. I don't think I can do that. I've had friends who have either gotten into very abused relationships or problem relationships. I've not been one who can quietly let it go because it's just not right. There's no reason why one human being should treat any other human being that way.
And I 100% agree with you. And then I'm going to offer what has happened to many mothers in many states. And we just actually we're part of winning a very big case in Maryland called McClanahan versus Washington County Department of Social Services. And this is a mother who did exactly what you just said, wouldn't close her eyes. Her daughter was making disclosures. She had various symptoms that were congruent with child sexual abuse. And so she took her to the doctors to get examined. The doctors found it suspicious for sexual abuse, called it into Child Protective Services. And this happened a number of times. And every time Child Protective Services interviewed this child or did an investigation, they closed it down and they ruled it out. What's astonishing is how often Child Protective Services shut down investigations, don't do a thorough and competent investigation, and instead turn around and blame the reporter or blame the mother for having done what every person is supposed to do, which is protect children, reach out for help, make a report if necessary. And this mother, Laura McClanahan, whose case was just won in the Maryland Court of Appeals, our highest appellate court, had been charged with child abuse by mental injury for taking her daughter for examinations, when she had physical problems. So she was on the
Wow.
child abuse registry.
I don't understand who you're supposed to go to, an authority.
Exactly.
Someone.
And so this is the insidious thing. And this is where the gender, gender issues or gender bias or gender stereotyping raises its ugly head. The mental health professionals employed by Child Protective Services to review the case for mental injury, child abuse by mental injury, said that they didn't see that the mother had been coaching the child, but she may have subconsciously or unconsciously influenced the child. Now, this attributes a great deal of power to women and mothers, that it's what they're thinking. They may not have said it, but it's what they're thinking, or they don't even know they're thinking it, but it's influencing the child. And you can be called a child abuser for thinking something.
That's
or
ridiculous.
Not even being aware of what you're thinking. And this mother also lost custody of the child to the father. She's been on supervised visitation for many years. So this is a landmark case. One of the terms that the court used in speaking about the case in their opinion, we were very gratified about, because they quote our brief. We did a amicus curiae brief.
Okay.
And here's the quote. It says, a parent who in good faith reports suspected child abuse and seeks a safe exam can be a critical protector and advocate of that child. Is that not so true? Yes,
it's common sense.
But how, it took going up to the highest court of Maryland to come to a common sense conclusion. And that's where we are in our great country right now.
Which is amazing. But at least it is moving forward and it is changing things.
Yes.
I don't understand how it got so skewed, because it's so straightforward, but it is interesting. And it's good that you are doing this work to change.
I think so. Yeah.
Even though it has to go to the highest court in the land.
Well, this is the highest court in Maryland. But, we are involved in U.S. Supreme Court cases. We've been in 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases in the last 2 years, and we're getting ready to work on a brief for another U.S. Supreme Court case.
So you do see improvement being made.
It's gradual. And, you can have great laws on the books, and the laws aren't being followed. You can also have areas of what they call unsettled law, where there are still big questions. How do we interpret this, or what do we do in this case or that case? And so for the pro bono attorneys, we encourage them to take these cases not just for the individual case and for the individual child, who of course is very important, but the fact that this could be good for other children, and that it will hopefully ripple out beyond the borders of a state and have effect nationally.
Well, what you do is phenomenal. Throughout your life, have you ever, and I know you talked about faith, and that is so incredibly important, and then the importance of prayer and keeping that connection. But is there any other strength or insight, belief that you have inside you, that you have found that gets you through all the rough spots in your life, obstacles and challenges?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know that I do it very consciously actually, is I am always connecting myself with nature, being outside, looking at the plants, how they grow. I have a little balcony, so I grow things on my balcony. I love the process of nature, so I follow that very closely. The seasons mean a lot to me, how, living into each season as it passes by, looking at things that are beautiful, that inspire me, whether it's art or music. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and I attend concerts and, go to, home concerts. For here, there's the Maryland Lyric Opera, and one of our board members, Brad Clark, has wonderful concerts. And so, this is uplifting and inspiring, and it shows you that there is good in the world, that there is beauty in the world, that there's also truth in the world.
Yes.
And that faith, that there are these things and that we can continually experience them. They lift my spirits. They connect me with other people doing good things. in my daily work, it's the question of don't do that. You shouldn't do that. That is a bad thing to do. But then, to be in this other part of life, which is like, this is good. And I'm very interested in how children are educated. I'm very interested in sustainable biodynamic agricultural practices. And anything that brings health and well-being is important to saturate yourself in.
Yes, I feel the same way. I love nature. You see the beauty, you feel the connecting. It just raises you up to a state of wonder.
There are different well springs, and there's, to be connected to that deep, deep inner wellspring that also connects you to other people,
Sure.
in the arts and
Sure.
agriculture, and also connects you to culture and history and the people who have gone before us.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Well, now, if someone wants to, maybe they hear our program and maybe they're going through something that they feel alone and they need to contact you. What is the best way to get hold of you?
The best way to get hold of me is to send me an email.
And that is?
And that is my first name, which is Eileen, EILEEN, .King, KING, at child, horizontal dash justice.org.
That's a great email, but what I'll do is I will put that on my website so that people will have an easier time remembering it.
Great, and they can also, and our website is also just child justice, child-justice.org. And so I welcome people to have a look at the website, look at the videos that are posted up there under the resources page. And of course, if anyone would like to make a donation, I'm delighted.
Sure. And it's a 501c3
That's
too.
Correct, yes. So all
Yes.
donations are deductible to the full extent
Right.
of the law. Yeah.
And on your webpage, you have, can they contact you through the webpage also?
Yes, that same email address is there on the webpage.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, it has been an absolute new awareness show for me, and I'm sure for the viewers too. I think what you do is phenomenal, absolutely
Thank
phenomenal, and so needed. It is so time to make great strides in this area. You're a pioneer.
Thank you, and and I'm honored to be in that group of people who are doing this pioneering work. This is cutting edge. It's the frontier of when you think of the sort of circle of violence, which includes sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, and all of that. If we're making visible what has not yet been so visible. We're making
Exactly.
speakable what has been taboo.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's very much needed. Oh, thank you so, so much.
You're so very welcome. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, same here. And for all of you listening, abuse is just something we do not have to have. If you are in an abused relationship, if you are seeing abuse, if you're having abuse with children, contact someone. Talk to friends. Talk to professionals. Talk to people who know. Eileen, for instance, and I have helped people get out of relationships that are abusive also. But the worst thing you can do is to be quiet. It's not going to stop. It's going to grow. It'll get worse the more secure the abuser feels. So you have to open up. And the most important thing is you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. Find strength and find someone to help you. By the way, I do have, for the new year coming in, I do have a Value Yourself, How Important Valuing Yourself report that is free and very apropos for this show. Make it an awesome day, everyone, and I'm glad you're here. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to Live and Love Life with Alena Chapman. For more information on the show, its guests, or to contact Alena, please visit alenachapmanlife.com. Have an awesome day, and we remind you to live and love life.